Salut la famille, welcome to my YouTube channel for this new behind the scene look at a photo shoot I had 2 years ago in Tokyo, Japan. This footage has been sitting on my hard drive for 2 years and I thought it was time to share it instead of letting it gather dust. The shoot took place in a small studio apartment that I rented for the session. If you've ever been to Japan, you know how tiny indoor spaces can be, and this studio is no exception. The space was extremely small. To give you an idea, the BTS camera had to be placed right by the door, on the widest setting to capture this. However, the studio was well decorated and featured beautiful windows that provided incredible natural light. The core idea of the shoot was to soften the look of our model. Maya is a competitive bodybuilder with a physique carved of wood. So I wanted to contrast her definition with a soft, intimate boudoir-like environment. This provided a pleasing dynamic rather than placing her in a regular studio or a grungy location. Something I want to highlight is that Maya doesn't speak English. As you can see, I was trying to be very expressive with my guidance, showing her physically how I want her to pose and transmitting my ideas through demonstration. I believe photographers should develop this habit because words aren't always enough to convey what we have in mind. At the end of the day, photography is a visual art and not speaking the same language shouldn't be a barrier. For the entire shoot, I relied on natural light. We had large windows and I kept the curtains closed to soften the light a little bit, allowing it to act like massive softbox. As it's customary for any shoot where I want to highlight muscle definition, I mostly shoot from the shadow side and try to pose the model so the light hit her sideways. This technique is emphasized the contours and definition of the body. As usual for my fitness and swimwear shoots, I used oil to give the skin a beautiful glow and shine. If you have watched my videos, you know I love this Hershey oil spray because it doesn't need to be rubbed like other oils and require no touching if you don't have assistant to help you with that. And for those of you interested in gear, I was using my Sony a7 IV with my Sigma 35 1.4 to get as much light as possible from this indoor space to the sensor with the 1.4. And on some occasions I switched to my Samyang 24 to 72.8. I will leave the links to all the gear in the description, including the oil spray. When it comes to posing, I try to incorporate as much of the apartment as possible. As you can see, I utilized everything available: the chair, the table, the sofa, and the decorative leather. As I often say, we are no longer shooting on film, where we are limited by the roll. We can shoot as many ideas as we can and delete them later. I would rather have pictures from bad ideas than go home from a shoot and regret not trying something. That happens often to me, and I'm sure it happened to you as well. For the physical posing, and since Maya is a fit lady, the idea was pretty basic, focusing on a few key things. Always having the body stretch, arcing the back, and obviously making sure the toes are always pointed. Pointed toes are critical because they are easily forgotten by models who don't have much experience. You have to keep an eye on them because an unpointed foot can make a great picture look awkward. Posing is generally a dynamic process, so you should constantly be micro-adjusting your model throughout the shoot, especially when you don't have the luxury of working with an experienced professional. To be honest, the outfits were okay, but I thought we could have done much better. As I mentioned, we had a language barrier and we were communicating only through Instagram. Sometimes when writing to people on internet, I'm a little hesitant to ask for too much, because it's common for models to ghost you as soon as you start getting too demanding. I try not to be too chatty, especially for an overseas shoot where a model bailing could mean missing a lifetime opportunity. Because who knows if you ever go back to that country. This happened to me last month in Korea where 2 planned photo shoots were cancelled at the last minute. All that made it that we didn't prepare the outfits in advance. I just asked Maya to bring as much as she could so we could decide together. If I had to do it again, I would have chosen outfits that were a little less sporty to match the boudoir session more closely. A lot of what Maya wore felt a little too casual for the environment. But at the end of the day, you deal with what you have. If you have the chance, prepare well in advance. So guys, that's all for the behind the scene video. If you like the video and you want to support the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.